Hello, good morning, everybody. My name is Tricia Taitt. I am CEO of FinCore. We are a fractional CFO and accounting services company. And this is Dancing with Numbers in Real Life. When I wrote my book, Dancing with Numbers, Grow a Financially Healthy Business and Choreograph the Life That You Want, I interviewed 20 business owners who were self-proclaimed non-numbers people, but they grew multi-million dollar businesses. And so I wanted to take those stories or that experience and bring it live to you all to normalize these conversations around money. So today I'm really happy to have Manuela here from Kadeya to talk about her very unique eco-friendly manufacturing slash hardware company. And I'm not going to do it full justice, but I want Manuela to introduce herself to the peoples, to my LinkedIn audience, to my YouTube audience. Welcome, Manuela.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here and great to connect with you again, Tricia, and get to meet your followers as well.
Beautiful. So, first time we met, I was in Chicago and I was listening to your story, and you said something about numbers that I will not forget. In fact, I made a post about it. It was brilliantly said. I'm not going to ask you to restate those quotes, but we're going to talk about the money and metrics. But first, tell us about the evolution of your business. Like, how did you get started? How did you get into this very unique space? And how has it grown to today?
Absolutely. I think a lot of people talk about that singular light bulb aha moment.
Mhm.
And for me, at least, it was really a series of really small observations that started compounding and adding up to something bigger, which led me to build Kadeya. A few of those moments that I'll mention. I was born in Brazil. I moved to the States when I was 7, and I remember being shocked by the amount of garbage that this country generated. And I used to have a dirty little secret. I'd say stay after school and sort my teacher's trash to make sure that the paper would get recycled.
Mhm.
We didn't talk about sustainability then, right? It was just this thing as a little kid that made me feel like we were not doing the right thing. And
Right.
I am lucky to have been raised by two academics who taught me to think kind of in systems. And so when I started sorting that pail of trash in my second grade classroom, I started thinking about all the pails of trash in every single second grade classroom. And so that really stuck with me. And I my whole life, I did all these like nerdy things to try to minimize waste. I got to move to Beijing, China in 2007 to report for Newsweek magazine. And in the 8 years I lived there, that country went from being a reuse economy to a single use economy. And by the time I left in 2015, China had run out of landfill space. So
Wow.
anything that happens in China is a harbinger of what the rest of the world, I think, is going to experience or struggle with. And then the last thing, I got to work at a company called Palantir Technologies. Usually stirs up a lot of emotions when I say that. It was a very good learning experience for me. And one of the things I learned is I became friends with the kitchen staff. And those were kind of my buddies. Those are the people I hung out with at
Mhm.
lunchtime. And they were talking about how annoying and labor intensive it was that they had to constantly be bringing up pallets of bottles of water and soda and restocking them in the fridges. And then they would store them in this like utility closet at the end of the day to be then picked up by the recycling or garbage truck. And because we were in Manhattan, they had to do this really frequently because we just didn't have the physical space to store all that waste. So I really took those three things together and said, okay, look, single use is actually not working, but the way we're doing reusable bottles today that we carry around our own Yetis, Swells, Clean Canteen, Stanley Cups, whatever is the hot bottle of the day, that also isn't solving the problem. And I can talk about
I
the
have like five
numbers.
or six of them.
We all do, right? I mean, you posted about it. Like you've got
Yeah.
these bottles sitting there and usually you forget them. You don't wash them. Maybe you don't trust the water where you're going. You're traveling and it takes up a lot of space. There's all these reasons why reusables are great in some situations. But at the end of the day, we're all, even if you care about the climate or plastics or microplastics in your bloodstream, we're all still buying single use packaged beverages.
Right.
And so I really wanted to figure out the root cause of single use. Like, why do we love it so much? Why is it a $2 trillion market growing at 7.5% CAGR? We're producing 1 trillion bottles a year
Wow.
on a global scale. It's just immense. And recycling, even if you think it works, we're only recycling 5 to 6% of that. So I really wanted to figure out, well, why are we using single use? What is the problem that single use solves for us? And can I solve that same problem with a different solution that just happens to be reusable?
Sure. And can you describe to us your solution? We can see a little diagram of it in your background. I thought that was really
Yeah,
cool that your background does that, because I did not have a visual of what it was. But can you explain the solution that you have come up with?
absolutely. So what we've designed for the consumer is basically just a really cool vending machine. You go up to it just like a vending machine, and you can see there's a touch screen. And so we've got all types of cold, non-alcoholic beverages. We have flat water, sparkling water, and then 4 or 5 other flavors at a time. So Gatorade, Coca-Cola products, Pepsi products, sparkling water, things with electrolytes, all these newfangled products. We can carry that.
Mm.
And you go up on this side, and just like kind of a bike sharing system, you would first time ever create an account. You don't have to you don't have to download a app or anything, but you create an anonymized account. We don't know who you are. We're not going to know that you're Tricia Tate, but we might know that you're Red Lips 123, and you'll always be Red Lips 123 when you log in. And so now we know you're a unique person. You choose your beverage, you check out digitally with your Apple Pay, your Google Pay, credit card, whatever. And then your beverage actually gets filled fresh in front of your eyes in 7 seconds, right in here, in a pre-sanitized stainless steel bottle that's
Nice.
just been sitting there waiting. That gets filled in 7 seconds. It's really, really fast. The door opens and you reach in, you grab your delicious custom beverage. The water is filtered to a really high degree, remove microplastics. It's cold, it's crisp, and it's exactly the product that you wanted at that moment. You go on about your day, you walk around. I'll talk a little bit about our beachhead market, which is very unique. But for the user, when you're done, you bring the bottle back over on this side. Every bottle has a QR code that's etched into the bottom. So
Nice.
we know, kind of like a library book, that you checked out that bottle.
Right, right, right.
And so you show the QR code here, that opens this little door. You place your bottle inside. And then in milliseconds, we do a quick overhead scan to understand if there's any debris inside that we don't want to deal with. Bubble gum, cigarette butts, plastic wrappers, a grain of rice. We just don't
Lipstick.
want to deal with it. We can talk about lipstick, actually. That is an exception. So it's very interesting. And then the machine takes care of washing and sanitizing and drawing the bottle to be refilled all over again. So you no longer have to carry around your bottle. You don't have to look for a tap to fill it up and wonder, is the water good? You don't have to think about, did I wash my bottle? Is it clean? So what we've done is we've removed the burdens that come with reuse and made it as or more convenient, low cost, and high quality as when you buy a branded beverage. We've
Got
just
it.
removed the plastic from the equation.
So does it have a cover when you take the bottle? You can add a cover.
Yeah,
Okay,
great
so
question.
what's going on with lipstick?
Yeah, so it turns out, and this, everyone who works in the dishwash industry, if you go to meet someone at Ecolab, they will know this. High-end lipsticks, like Chanel's, are very hard to remove.
What?
Yes, because they're oil-based. That's why they last longer.
Yes.
So, and there is no dishwash solution in the world right now that can remove a high-end lipstick.
That's another
In
problem
that
to be
case,
solved.
yes, we'll maybe we'll solve that one next. I love that. I love the challenge.
Yeah.
So, in that case, what we would do is we would either reject the bottle and say, "Hey, we're not going to accept your bottle. You know, no penalty. Feel free to discard it, or you can keep it." If it's kind of lower quality lipstick, like what you buy at like a drugstore or whatever, that's no problem, and we can wash it. We'll probably end up accepting the bottle, honestly, and we'll have a little area for like discarded bottles that we will manage to then recycle later. But our beachhead market is industrial workplaces. So it's not a lot of women are actually working in those environments,
Mm-hmm.
at least the environments we're currently in. We're now looking at hospitals. I think that will change.
Got it.
And we're not finding a lot of women. This is not a comment on anybody, but they're not wearing Chanel lipstick to work, is what we're seeing.
At industrial places.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, first, so I have so many questions, but I do want to. How long did it take you to? Because this is an invention.
Yes, we have a
You're an
patent. We have a
inventor.
utility patent. I'm an inventor. I'm listed on the patent as the
You're an
inventor.
inventor. So, like, I've never had. You're the first maybe inventor business I've ever met. How long did it take
Cool.
to come up with this? Not come up with the invention, to actually make it to all the design and functionality. How long did that take?
It took those 3 years at Palantir learning how people prefer single use. It
By the
took
way,
two
have they
years.
taken on your thing, your last place of employment? Have they bought one?
Well, actually, so we're not focused on white collar offices right now. So I've
Okay.
not pursued Palantir or other like other white collar workplaces.
Mhm.
Although the kitchen staff that I mentioned, they all went on to other companies, and they were my first pilots, and they were some of my first customers.
Really?
Absolutely,
Okay, wonderful.
yeah,
I
yeah.
love that because if they're not, they could watch this and get with the
They
program.
know who they
Okay.
are. They've been incredibly supportive. They post on LinkedIn. They've written. So we've won 2 major grants with the U.S. Air Force. They wrote
Congratulations.
letters of support explaining the problem that Kadeya is solving. And it turns out, I think, starts to answer your previous question. Yes, people care about the plastics, but as we've seen, they're not changing their behaviors. We're still buying plastic
Mhm.
stuff, right? Like we all know it's not
Yeah.
great. We're still doing it.
Right.
It turns out in workplaces, you are required by OSHA to hydrate your workforce. You
Interesting.
therefore have a water budget. You're currently doing a ton of really annoying logistically intensive things like I described at Palantir with the kitchen staff constantly like bringing loads of pallets up and down the elevators over and over again.
Mhm.
So while the sticker price for a bottle of water from a wholesaler like Costco is about 30 cents per bottle of water, the fully loaded cost of that bottle of water is more like 70 cents. Because if you take into account the labor, the gas and transportation and the storage.
Right.
And Kadeya is able to charge exactly 30 cents and there are no other charges
So
because
charge
there's no
who
labor.
30 cents?
Yeah, so the business model, great question. And this will also inform, I think, the numbers
Yeah.
conversation. So we have a model, we call it hydration as a service, which
Okay.
means that we're just selling by the bottle, just
You're
like
selling
single use.
hydration.
Yeah,
I love that.
exactly.
Okay.
And so Kadeya owns and operates the machine. A customer says, "Hey, we want this." Like Ecolab is actually a customer. "Hey, we want your machine. Come plug it in, come install it." We connect to the water line and a drain line as well as power source. And then we're off to the races. And what works really well in these industrial environments is because the employer really worries about hydrating their workforce for safety and performance,
Mhm.
they already are spending about 30 cents per bottle of water. So now instead of paying Costco 30 cents plus another 40 cents for delivery, et cetera, they're paying Kadeya 30 cents and it's only 30 cents because we've
Mm.
eliminated all the logistics, right? Because this is a self sustaining bottling plant.
Yes.
on site that never runs out of water.
And you all are refilling the beverages. You all are refilling the bottles and taking out the defective bottles. That's all built into the 30 cents
Yeah.
per serving,
And
basically.
our CapEx too.
Beautiful. So that's the benefit. Because I was wondering, as a manufacturing company or industrials company, if we're one of your customers, how do they get better margins for this versus their current solution of single use? That's what I was wondering.
Yep. Yeah. So in the relationship, like with Ecolab, where we're directly engaging the customer, they're paying us per bottle of water 30 cents. They save about 40 to 50% on their operating expenses related to their hydration program, right? That's where we're playing. We're not solving all their other problems, but we're also digitizing hydration because, again, you self identify at the machine and every bottle has a QR code. So for the first time, there's a digital record of hydration that you can turn around and provide to OSHA if an inspector shows up and ask questions. Hey, do you have water available? And that's how inspectors do it. They just show up unannounced.
Oh,
Now
that's
you have
right.
a record to prove we've made sure our workers are hydrating. Here's their live data on historically what they've consumed and how we've made sure that they had the right rest and water breaks and had access to the necessary water. And then if you're so saving tons of money plus all these additional benefits of worker health and safety
And
and
that's on
compliance.
an app or software or something that the CEO
Yep,
or
and that's
facilities
included.
manager can
That's
download.
also included in that 30 cents.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So I'm geeking out on this
Yeah, I love this.
because I'm a nerd and I'm a finance person. So anytime that I ask people about their business, I'm already thinking like, what's on the P&L? What do the lines like? What do the expense look like? What the COGS lines look like? So
Yep.
for an industrials company, I never really realized this, or manufacturing, or a company that is sort of unionized and has OSHA coming in, they have to have a hydration line on their P&L, like
They do.
water.
They have a water line.
There has to be a water expense line under like facilities or rent that,
Yep.
and now you have something tied to data, tied to like exactly what that line should be. I love that.
Yeah. I
That's
think you've
wonderful.
highlighted a key point, which is yes, Kadeya is innovating, but we've looked to minimize friction against the status quo. And we are looking to basically be seen as like a one-to-one replacement for anything that already exists. So to your point, they already have a water line
Yeah.
item on their budget.
Yes.
We're coming in, we're saving money against it. The CFO is
Love
going
that.
to approve that,
Are
right?
you
We're not
marketing that?
adding.
Are you marketing like that? Are you saying it like that right now?
We are, so our customer, like the buyer
Yeah.
at the customer for us is usually procurement or facilities.
Oh, because if you do in a hospital, oh my God.
I know.
But I didn't, okay, I'll talk to you offline. What I didn't talk about, I'm on the I'm on the board of the New York City healthcare system, and procurement is a huge
Excuse me?
it's a huge thing.
Excuse
So
me?
I mean, I'm on the board, but I'm not the
Yeah,
administrator. I'm not the
sure.
administrator, but administration, like I've come to realize how big the costs are for procurement. It's a huge thing for a healthcare system.
Yeah.
I never really realized that, but of course now I geek out on things like that. Anytime I go into a business, I want to know what are the numbers, how do they work, and what are the impacts to the bottom line. And in a healthcare system, yes, procurement is a huge one, and not going beyond the limits of what you thought you were going to spend, but healthcare costs always increase and they always blow out the budget for whatever staffing or facilities or maintenance or pay, whatever it is. Anyway, back to your company, back to Kadeya. What metrics do you use internally to measure the financial performance of your business?
The number one metric is number of bottles dispensed in a 24-hour period.
Hmm. Okay. And what's the number 2 or 3 metric?
Yeah. Number two This is the next phase of the business that we have to prove out when you are talking about like our financials. Some of these are based on like early pilots that now we have to fully prove out. So we're very interested these next 6 months to learn what our true operating costs will be, because the machine now is real. So to your question, 3 years at Palantir, 2 years at MIT for business school, and then I went full time 5 years ago. We built the full machine a year and a half ago, and we've been since testing it to make sure that it could survive in the wild. And now it's going out into the world for the first time, like the fully autonomous machine. We've done
what
pilots.
makes it? I got it. So what makes it official, like official launch?
It's going to customer sites with all the bells and whistles. So it'll all be in Chicago next year. Next 2026, we'll have 44 machines out over the course of the year.
Wow.
Yeah, it's very exciting. The first two, one is going to Canteen Compass Group, which is the world's largest food and beverage service provider. In that case, the revenue model is simplified. It's just a flat monthly fee. They pay us, and then they turn around and do all the operations, and they price the beverage however they want it. So to your question, we didn't want to get involved in their margins. So we just charge them a flat fee. They turn around, they place it wherever there's a vending machine that they want to replace, and then they make the upside. So they get a good margin.
So you're going through a distributor kind of.
Yeah, they're like our channel partner.
Got it. Okay.
Canteen Cups Group oversees 200,000 vending machines in the United States alone.
Wow.
And we get to a very nice revenue number in 2029 with 700 machines. So but like 200,000 machines is, yeah.
Then you all have to manufacture it. That's heavy CapEx.
Yes.
So how do you fund that investment?
Yeah. And this is also where we kind of started chatting before. We are closing out our first priced round. So from venture capitalists and angel investors. So that's happening right now. Yes. So there's a valuation on the company, there's shares. That's converting some earlier safes that we had raised from also VCs and angels. And then part of why we want to put two machines out. So one goes to Canteen Compass Group, one is going to Turner Construction. Wow. And then after those first two machines, we've already lined up an asset-backed finance partner.
Okay.
To start now defraying the cost of the CapEx. So there's a lot of different models that you probably know better than me about different debt instruments and debt providers. I've basically mapped out what I think are going to be the debt instruments that will become available to us at different stages of the business as we've de-risked the business. And so highest cost debt is going to be, there's venture debt, but I prefer not to take that.
Right.
And then there's asset-based finance where that's like a 1.5x. So still pretty expensive.
But they leverage the inventions as collateral.
Collateral. Exactly. Yes. That's the beauty of the hardware model. And then, you're going to be able to educate me further, but I'm excited. For example, one of the companies that have signed up for 27. So we have 27 orders right now that we're looking to fulfill.
Nice.
So one of those companies they've already signed on for 5. They've come back and said, we're going to want to buy 40. Like we want to buy them outright. So now once you get a purchase, I get a purchase order.
Right.
In the hydration as a service model, we own it. So we don't get a purchase order, MSAs. So we will get a purchase order that I can actually take to the bank. And I think there's also revolver type instruments, once we really understand what the payback period looks like and then what the cost of capital should be. So my hope is that this is the last time we're raising equity capital for inventory and working capital. And we raised a relatively small round because we didn't want to spend too much equity on inventory and working capital.
So now would it be called inventory? Well, the bottles are inventory, but the machines are not called machinery or equipment? as an asset?
As far as I've understood, that's a really good question. As far as I've
Just
understood, it was
curious.
inventory, like the parts before we assemble them.
Ah, interesting. Okay, yeah. And then there's the finished good, which is the whole
Yeah.
machine. But then you
Yeah.
have
And
the
then we put it in a
bottles. So that,
box.
yeah.
Mhm.
So okay. So there's many parts to this like asset side of the balance sheet. You see how I'm geeking out on this.
I love it.
But I love that you have decided on what the financing models would be at each stage of growth. So asset-backed financing, for those in the audience, is when you can leverage the value of the asset, which is the invention that she has, and even the bottles and even the parts. Probably people could use it for other things. I don't know. Um, in order to get financing that is supported and backed by the assets. And then you mentioned another level of financing where you can take the purchase order into the bank, and that serves as collateral, the purchase order.
Mm-hmm.
So basically the intent to purchase can serve as financing. Okay,
Yeah.
wonderful.
And purchase orders are, I mean, anyone can back out of a contract, right? But purchase
Right.
orders are considered somewhat legally binding, and all of our customers are large multinational enterprises. So
Yeah.
if I understand correctly, the bank looks at that and says Turner Construction is not going to default,
Right.
or the U.S. Air Force
Right.
is not going to
It,
default. This is trustworthy.
uh-huh.
We will take that on. And then there's actually another model that I've learned recently, which is a company is they will take the contract directly with the Air Force, for example,
Mm-hmm.
and then they directly get repaid on their loan, which is very valuable, right?
So
Because
they
it
get
doesn't
a
have to
loan on the
redirect.
I think that's a loan on receivables.
It might be, but the cost of capital on that is like super low,
Okay.
like a couple
Okay.
percentage points. So there's these financial instruments that are going to be
Yes.
really interesting. So I think to answer your original question, beyond operating expenses, and to your point, like how frequently do we have to restock the bag and box syrups or swap out the water filter? Like we have estimates and we've run tests, but now we need to prove it out. So
Yeah.
we need to prove that the expenses are managed within a certain kind of range. And then the
Yeah.
third one, to your point, is cash flow. Like we check in on cash flow weekly.
Yes, I would imagine so. And your whoever manufactures, is that exclusive to you, or you have multiple manufacturers you're working with?
So we will be producing the machines um, in house for the first year. And then we'll probably move to a contract manufacturer. There's going to be a strategic conversation of what parts are kind of our secret sauce that we don't ever want to leave our environment, what parts are just generic off the shelf. Like we're using an off the shelf dishwash system from the world's best dishwash company. Like we
Mhm.
don't, they're going to produce that for us, right?
So there's definitely pros and cons to manufacturing your own thing, but it's made in the USA. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and you're still working on R&D, right? So is there such thing as R&D financing as well?
Yep, we've accessed R&D financing through the course of the company. Yep,
Okay.
and we're mostly done with R&D. I don't know how this would be termed. Actually, it's a good question. Um, Part of why we want to do it in house is yes, we're going to be hearing what's not working in the field, and we're
Mhm.
going to want to make tweaks and improvements in house. We kind of consider that engineering rather than like R&D, but because it's not like original, I don't know. We'll have to
Got
figure
it.
that out.
All right.
And then, yeah,
So, from what I hear, there's some other metrics. You need to understand your cash burn because you're looking at that weekly, and your runway.
yes. Yeah.
And
And making sure we're timing our payments to people according
yeah,
to the value and cost of capital.
and that's exactly right. And then how, how much you're having to pay for financing, pay back for financing. And then on the top line is how many bottles, right?
Yep.
How many bottles per usage. So, I think when we met, you mentioned something about when you started the business, you were pricing for
Oh, yeah.
profitability, but
To the margin.
right, pricing to the margin, which is profitability, right? Growth, either gross profit margin or net profit margin. Just for all of you who are out there in the universe who may be like sort of newish to numbers or this mumbo jumbo, right? When you look at your profit and loss statement or your income statement, there's revenue minus cost of goods sold or direct costs, which gives you gross profit margin, really important number, and then all the operating expenses, and then net profit margin, right? So we could be talking about gross profit margin or net profit margin. In this case, because yours is capital intensive, we might be talking about gross profit margin. But anyway, you talked about pricing to the margin, and then when you go for investors, you're pricing to the market. Is that what you said?
Well, yeah, that is what I said. And I actually got turned down by an investor because we priced to the market and he wanted us pricing to the margin.
Now talk to us about this, because this is really important. Nowadays, investors, back in the day, you could just be traction and revenue. Like that's the most important thing for investors, but investors want to see some bottom line.
Yeah.
So talk to us about the difference between pricing to the margin and pricing to the market. What does that mean?
Yeah. So Kadeya obviously is a hardware company. That does mean the bar from the beginning was raised on understanding like the unit economics, right? Yeah. How does a station generate margin? Right. So we had always been working on that, and that was always front and center. And we had a hard time. I mean, we've raised a decent amount of capital, but it's been a lot of work, a lot of conversations. Like you hear people, oh, I did 50 conversations and I got a term sheet. That's not our case.
Yeah.
And we just kept hearing the investors worry about the margin. So we started for the first like 2.5, 3 years, we were like, okay, we got to get this margin to work. That's what we're being asked about. Can this really be a business? And I think that's an important question, right? You want to understand whatever your time frame is, that you will eventually be profitable, right? Yeah. Like that's the goal if you're building a real business, not I mean, so many companies like Twitter, they weren't profitable when they IPO'd.
Right.
Tesla wasn't, Amazon wasn't.
We work
right?
on it. Yeah, keep going. Yep, keep going. We could go.
Right.
Keep going.
So it was like, okay, I need to be clear about the margins and the potential for this to be a profitable business. And then about 2 years ago, it was actually a conversation with my husband, and he was like, and we were we would go through the sales funnel, top of funnel, massive inflows. And then we get to the pricing conversation and they'd be like, oh, well, you're a little more expensive. You're a little more expensive than what I've got. So we were slowing down on closing contracts. And so we said, wait a second, let's step back. And with my husband's advice, he said, you'll never discover product market fit. Like you'll never know if the market actually wants what you've got if you don't experiment with the pricing. So you need to actually price to the market. Understand, is this a potential product that could sell and compete? And then that opens, of course, those other questions, Tricia, right? Of like, okay, maybe economies of scale, like maybe that's when we become profitable. But at least like, okay, if we price here, let's go do the market sizing analysis. What is the potential SOM, SAM, TAM? And then let's work backward to figure out if the margin eventually can be hit. And so we price to the market instead, which means that the current operating margin is not where we want to be. It's a slightly longer payback period than we would like. It's about 2 years.
Okay.
But we've mapped out a path. Now we know what the pricing needs to be. We're overwhelmed with demand. We've got 27 stations pre-ordered. We've got a $32 million qualified pipeline waiting for our product. We're batting away customers. So now we've proven like the market is there. This does have a value and a purpose out in the world. And then we were able to step back and say, okay, now let's think about those margins. And we mapped out how to get the cost of the machine down. Actually, it's not even scale engineering. It's just some design changes, which is again why we want to do the production in-house initially to make those tweaks. And we can now get the capex of the station down to a point where the payback happens really quickly. How much revenue and the size of the market we could.
Got it. So you just mentioned a number of things, and I'm just jumping in here in the chat for everybody else. You said Tam, Sam, and Sam, and people are like, whose name is that? So just so some people know, there are some metrics that investors want to look at to measure, like, the market size and the potentiality of this growing. And these are the terms, just so everybody has, right? TAM, total addressable market. SAM is serviceable addressable market, and SOM is serviceable obtainable market. I just wanted to drop this here for all of those
Yes.
who are in the world out there going for investment and wanting to understand these things. But to your point, so at first, and your husband was right? You also have to understand your customer. What are they willing to bear? And so test that out to see if there's actually a market for this, and then manage your costs in alignment with the pricing, and then you get the popularity, and then you can raise the price over time, right? But
Yeah.
investors, because they want to return on their investment, they want to
Mm-hmm.
see profits. No, gone are the days where they just want to see ridiculous top line growth. And to your point, where all these companies IPO just because their revenues were crazy and large and huge. So thank you for sharing that. I want to take it back a little bit, because you told us in your beginning you were a second grader that was interested in the environment, and I don't know what your undergrad was in or your master's degree, but I'm not sure it was in business or finance, and you were speaking fluent finance language right now. So how did you
Thanks.
level up? Well, let's go back even further. What are some of your earliest memories around money? What are the lessons that you learned? Who taught it to you? Was there like a moment that comes up and you're like, when I was a kid, this? What were your earliest memories of money?
Yeah, I have a very tortured relationship with money.
As do many people, so don't judge yourself.
Yeah, thank you. So my dad, who has since passed away, was a Marxist economist, and was very involved in Latin America's communist movement and had to flee two dictatorships.
Wow.
So he really was tortured about money and living in a capitalist society. Growing up, I didn't need for anything. I had food, I had books, I had clothes, but we didn't have furniture, for example, and like we didn't have a television, we didn't have a microwave. These like maybe creature comforts that we've all come to assume everybody has. Um, and like my mom, who doesn't have a financial background, she's a feminist anthropologist. She managed the family's money. She invested in the stock market in secret behind my dad's back. She wanted to invest in Apple computers in 1989, and he wouldn't let her.
What?
Yeah. And like I went on, I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago. I worked at the Chicago Board of Trade growing up to make money. And my dad wouldn't talk to me about my work. He like silent treatment. And I went to college and I was really interested in finance. I was like in the finance club and at Harvard, and I got like an internship at Goldman Sachs my freshman year. My dad gave me the silent treatment. And he basically, even though he was an economist and you would think he's the one who's going to help me think about money, it was like turned it off, just didn't want to discuss it. And my mom did her best, like she opened a bank account with me, but we never talked about like, how do you calculate your personal budget? How do you think about money in day-to-day life? I actually, part of why I moved to China was my first job out of college. I was in New York City and I wasn't paid enough. Like I literally, like I accepted a salary. I didn't do the math on my living expenses and I was just accruing credit card debt. Like I was living off of credit cards in New York City. And I was like, I cannot keep doing this. And part of why I went to China was like, I could have a lower cost of living there while, of course, having a wonderful experience professionally and personally. And I slowly chipped away at paying back my credit card debt. It took me 10 years.
That's interesting you went to China and not back to Brazil or Latin America.
It is very interesting. Yeah, there's a lot of reasons. I have a lot of friends who are like, why aren't you in Brazil right now? And in some ways, I wish I had and spent more time with my grandmother, who has since passed away. I think I wanted something completely different. I wanted
Okay.
to expand my horizons, right? And really test myself. And I didn't want to go back to something that felt familiar and
And that
comfortable.
you did. And that you did. And it's added to the path. You know, I truly believe from a spiritual standpoint that like we all have a path and we all have innate abilities and qualities and things that are aligned with our purpose and our path in this lifetime. And it's up to we have the choice to align with that. And like that was just part of your path to building to building this. So I know you were in the finance club, and so that's probably how you got some of your finance knowledge, but how have you even leveled up your not only your finance knowledge, but your mindset? Because from childhood, it doesn't sound like anyone really talked to you about money and budget. So how have you shifted your mindset around money, and how have you leveled up your knowledge to, like the proficiency that you have now as a business owner?
I've been really lucky to bring on early a COO, CFO. I think I mentioned that to you. She was my third full-time hire,
Higher.
because very quickly I realized that I didn't have the capabilities to manage the finances of a company like this. I think fundamentally, hardware is a cash flow management business.
Mm-hmm.
And she has taken 3 hardware companies to exit. And so she really understands the ins and outs and also is able to provide a long view of what are the metrics we should focus on today versus tomorrow, et cetera, and going forward. Also, I really want to make sure that there would never be any like legal or tax issues. And so that was one of the first things I spent a lot of time on was making sure that we were set up on different financial management platforms. So like was it bills.com, and then what's the other platform that everybody goes on at first to like manage
QuickBooks?
their
QuickBooks
yeah,
Online?
QuickBooks.
Uh-huh.
And like I had a QuickBooks consultant, and I just made sure, even though I didn't necessarily know how to do it, I made sure that I always had someone who did know how to do things. And then it became clear after a few consultants that we really needed someone full time who would make sure that there would be like consistency
Mm-hmm.
and continuity in our
Processes.
paperwork, yeah, in our processes. So that's when I brought in Liz, and she's been incredible. And I've
You
learned
are,
through her.
and you've learned through your CFO, COO.
Yeah.
Anybody else has been on your money team at different stages of growth?
Yeah, well, I brought on a co-founder who was my classmate at MIT. We both did our MBA programs there. So I did get an MBA and I got like a crash
Oh,
course in finance. But, I'd say like the biggest lesson I walked away with was really just understanding the concept of cost of capital, which is
mm-hmm.
huge.
Yeah.
I really understand what the implications are for different costs of capital and different like risk profiles, but
Mm-hmm.
I would not be able. Yes, I got tested on like P&L, the 3
Yeah.
financial statements, but that was like in one ear out the other. Like I tested it and then I was like on to the next thing. So it's not like I would have been able to manage that. My whole team is incredibly financially fluent.
Savvy.
So yeah, my co-founder Denny, who's 25 years of experience in hardware, software, robotics. He's a mechanical engineer, so he's run R&D, innovation, and commercialization programs for huge companies and small companies. So, when we're mapping out our budget, like he comes with an incredibly sophisticated view of how we're going to need to spend that cash. And having someone like that is invaluable because, right, we got to raise money, we get the market signal from investors, we're raising too much or the valuation's too high. We have to come back, reorg, and say, okay, well, look, we aren't able to command that valuation to raise that amount of capital. We're going to need a lower valuation, which means if we want to minimize how much of the company we give up, we have to raise a smaller amount of capital. And we say, hey, Denis, can you go and figure out, like, does this get us where we need to get to? And then we have a conversation. Okay, we can get this many machines. We can deliver this many customers. We can hit this revenue target. Is that enough? And then I'm more reflecting like the external world of like the investors and the customers to then say,
Yeah.
no, that's not going to be enough. We need more machines, or we need the machines to be able to do this. And then also our director of marketing and growth, Allie Rose, used to be an entrepreneur herself, and she's run P&Ls. So she comes in, yes, with like marketing and sales. They got her ear to the ground of what are customers, a four-way conversation.
So what you're highlighting for me is the importance of having financially savvy people on your team who understand what the metrics are behind the making of your product or say you're not even a product or service, your invention, right? You're selling hydration. And then on the backside, how are you going to deploy that capital? And you have somebody that's helping you make sure your financial structure, or what we call financial core, the structure, the processes, the reporting around all of that stuff back to the investors is important. And I love this. Like, not many CEOs get the importance of having the right people on your money team, or the right people that understand not only the economics, but also the reporting, and are able to give you some education on it as a CEO as you go along. Everything that you just spoke about here is the importance of having a strong financial leader or a fractional CFO, full-time CFO on your team. And in your case, it was important that you had someone that had the experience of running a hardware company, or, building out your kind of invention. And so when you have a very unique business model, it's even more important to have people on your money team that understand your particular industry and background. The last thing that you're highlighting for me is you as a CEO are coachable. You are open to advisement. You're making your own decisions, but then you bring other people in that have specific, and that is so important as a CEO. And I hope that that is a lesson that those of you who are listening here also take that upon yourself. You could go for a finance degree, MBA, all of the things, but to really run a well-done business, you need to bring in people with subject matter expertise. As we wrap up here, I have like 3 quick questions to ask. One is, if you were to, for anyone out there who is trying to build a hardware company, manufacturing company, what is one lesson you'd share with someone starting out that they should know about getting their first client?
So this might not sound like I'm answering your question, but it is. I think early or first time entrepreneurs
It could be around getting your first client, or even like just building, like lessons of building that kind of company, your kind of company.
Yeah. So yeah, a lot of first time founders worry that if they tell people their idea, someone is going to like copy it or steal it. No one's going to steal your idea. They've got their own ideas. They're doing other stuff. They're busy. So what I recommend is, as soon as you realize you're interested in something and you're becoming obsessed with it, tell everybody who will listen to you. Literally tell your cab or Uber driver, tell your friend over a beer or a beverage, like tell your mom and your sister, whatever, because those early conversations are going to give you so much helpful feedback. The questions that they ask, that you hadn't thought of are going to really guide how you develop your idea. And that is how I found our first customer. My husband put me in a sailing class as a anniversary gift. It was, COVID. It was one of the things you could do. And we were here in
Mhm.
Chicago on the lake. And there was a woman on my boat who works at Gilbane Construction. And she and I just started chatting, really liked each other. I told her what I was doing, and she said, I can't get you into a white collar office, Manuela, but I could get you on a construction site tomorrow. And that comment opened my eyes to the industrial workforce as a potential market. And when I went and did a bunch of research, more conversations, and then I called her up. And after I said, like, yes, Esgy, let's do it. 3 weeks later, we were deployed in downtown Indianapolis at a Gilbane construction site, the largest healthcare construction project in the country. And
Wow.
we were there for 2 years. And they've now come back and asked for 10 machines. So it's sharing that's my advice, is talk to everyone and listen to what they're saying to you and use that to improve your idea and how you talk about it. And that's how you'll get your first customer, because someone eventually is going to be like, oh, totally, I have that problem. I would pay somebody to solve that for me. You're like, oh my God. Like, can I test this on you? If
I love
I
that.
build a prototype, would you use it?
Yeah.
That's the customer.
That's how you got your first customer. And then for those people out there who are building a hardware or manufacturing company, what is a lesson or two that you would share with them, especially if they're in the early years of building something unique like that?
Yeah. If you are not yourself experienced in the hardware or manufacturing space, quickly surround yourself with people who do have that background. It could be just advisors, consultants, could be a co-founder. Um, Hardware is expensive and it's slow.
Mm.
So every kind of misstep is very costly.
Right. And you had the engineering person around you. Yeah. How did you get financing for the beginning? Uh, since it's capital intensive.
Yeah, I raised from a lot of angel investors, mostly people who themselves had been in hardware at some point. And so I'll say, like, the 5-10 years, even before I started working on Kadeya, I was building relationships with people who have the capital to become angel investors. I wasn't being, I don't know what the right word is. Like, I wasn't being transactional. I was building
Mhm.
real relationships, but I was making sure that I had a rich network that I could call on um, when it was time for me to raise money.
Got it. But it was still intentional.
It was intentional
It
and
was
strategic.
intentional
Yeah.
and strategic and authentic at the same time. Last
Yeah.
question I have for you, because we are dancing with numbers in real life.
Yeah.
How would you describe the dance with your numbers when you first started your business? And now be creative here. Dance with your numbers, your first business, first year in business, and your dance with your numbers today.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of a type of dance that has a very slow tempo
Uh
and
huh.
then a dance that has a very fast tempo. So I don't know if it would be like some sort of like melody, some sort of waltz, slow
So, and
waltz, and
waltz,
then like
yes.
now breakdancing, because to your point and like the analogy of dancing, right, is I thought before that the numbers were like you set it and forget it.
Hmm.
And now I'm realizing it's a much more ongoing, continuous, high frequency conversation.
Mm. Ongoing high frequency conversation. That would be breakdancing into hip hop because it is continuously evolving and it
Yeah,
is
or
high
jazz, right?
frequency.
Maybe it's more like responding to the music around you.
Yeah, it is yes. is responsive, but is also responsive to the culture and the times. That's what I see as an
Yep.
evolution. But I really appreciate this time, Manuela. Thank you very much. You've
Thank
shared
you.
a lot with us about your unique experience as an inventor, as a creator of a manufacturing company, your financing. I also love to have women business owners on with me, because um, uh, a lot of times women business owners don't have the greatest sort of relationship to money, or we're still building our knowledge around money, but we are building such impactful businesses, and we have such passion based on our experience that we are bringing into these businesses. So I always want to continue to normalize the conversation of money, particularly for my women business owners. But for the larger entrepreneur in general, I see entrepreneurship as a pathway to generational wealth and legacy building. And I feel like I'm doing my part in my corner of the world to expand that. So thank you, Manuela, for being on Dancing with Numbers in Real Life. Um, to the audience, again, my name is Tricia Tate. I'm CEO of FinCore Fractional CFO Company, and author of Dancing with Numbers, Grow a Financially Healthy Business, Choreograph the Life You Want. We will have another fabulous LinkedIn Live and another business owner next month. We do this on a monthly basis. Again, we're on LinkedIn Live under my name. We're on YouTube under FinCore Strong. If you have any follow-up questions, comments, feedback after this interview, please drop it in the chat, drop it in the comments. Me or Manuela, I'll tag Manuela and she can answer the questions for you. And please follow Kadeya and what it's doing. And where can they follow you?
You can follow us on LinkedIn,
Mm-hmm.
and I do respond to every message on LinkedIn. So
Yeah.
feel free to write me there. You can see my email address as well here. Feel free to reach out. Those are the two main channels. And you can go to
Yeah.
our website, kadeya.com, sign up for very short, sweet newsletters.
Awesome. And if you want a demo, if you want to be her client, right, you could also reach out to her there. And if
Absolutely.
you all have, and if anyone is interested in joining Dancing with Numbers in Real Life, we're looking for 2026 speakers. And if you want to talk to a friendly fractional CFO, I am here as well. Thank you again, Kadeya, for spending the morning with us. Really appreciate it. And good luck to you.
Thank
I
you
look
so much.
forward.
Thanks for having me. This was great.
Yeah,
I'm
you're
so honored that you invited me.
yeah, you're welcome. And it was nice to meet you. Let's keep this conversation going because I want to keep following you.
Thank you.
Have
Definitely.
an awesome day and an awesome